Hi everyone, and welcome to this new class in this course in Aircraft Systems and Avionics. In this section we will be discussing the main idea of the pilot-aircraft interface. So that is the cockpit. As you probably know, the cockpit, or also known as the flight deck of an aircraft, is the operations compartment where the pilot is able to access all controls and subsystems for the normal operation of the aircraft. So the main idea of the cockpit is that the pilot will be able to control all of the control surfaces of the aircraft, that is, for instance, the ailerons, the tail configuration and many more, in order to make the aircraft move in one direction or another, right? And also he or she will be able to provide to the different subsystems of the aircraft, making sure that they operate normally and also activating some of the subsystems, like for instance the hydraulic system that we saw, in order to position the flaps at a certain degree, at a certain position, right, in order to establish a higher lift, for instance. So this is the brains of the aircraft, and where the pilot will be able to, as an interface, connect to all of the subsystems and the control surfaces of the aircraft. Right, so just to go through a few ideas for the cockpit, what we usually have in aircraft is the battle between traditional and glass cockpits. Okay, so this is the idea of just using the flight instruments as we discussed in the first section of this course, right? So that would be any type of systems such as this is the attitude indicator. Okay. We also have altimeters, we have the turn coordinators and many more, right? We have all of the basic set of instruments over here, combined with instrumentation for telecommunications to the ground and many more, okay? This is for the telecommunications, this is the radio frequencies and more variables that we have, okay? So basically it's all the analog instruments, just the basic configuration. This is for a Cessna 182. But again, due to the evolution of technology, okay, we basically adapted all of this analog technology to digital technology, meaning that instead of directly using information coming from the pilot static instrumentation, for instance, we take the same information but put it in simply digital terms, and we have screens showing the same information, right? So as you can see, it's basically the same aircraft, but the cockpit actually changes a bit, varies a bit. In addition to that, note also that we have such a, the attitude indicator, for instance. This is the analog display. In the case of any disturbances or any, failures in the electronic systems, in order, for the pilot to be able to operate nominally the aircraft in any case, okay? So this is the idea of the traditional cockpit and glass cockpit. This is in the case of general aviation or civil aviation. In the case of military aviation, what we would see is this is the cockpit of the submarine Spitfire, used on the Second World War by the British. And as you can see, the configuration, of course, it is analog. There was not many advancements on electronics and digital technology around that age. So it's, the basic configuration, the basic analog configuration, as compared to the Eurofighter Typhoon, okay, which would be something quite more digital oriented, but at the same time provides the same type of information. It's simply that due to the evolution of technology, this has become digital. Finally, I wanted to show to you the main difference between what a traditional cockpit looks like and a glass cockpit looks like in the case of commercial aviation. Right, so as you probably know, commercial aviation started, around the 40s, 50s, but it didn't really develop that much and become, so common until 60s, 70s, 80s, when the digital revolution was starting to take, a big part on many different types of technologies. So that is why mostly in commercial aviation we will find glass cockpits, okay? But at the same time we can also find some traditional cockpits from early on, Boeings or many other aircraft. So this is a Boeing 747. This is the big one, and the idea is that we simply have this kind of configuration which is analog, based completely on analog. You can see the amount of redundant systems, the attitude indicator, okay, I believe this is the altimeter, is all basically on one side and the other for redundancy, and many more related to digital communications, simply telecommunications to ground, the radio part. Okay, this is the part of in order to increase or reduce the thrust of our aircraft, right, of the engines of our aircraft, and many more. As you can see, it's basically the same in one case or the other, but instead of having all the analog instrumentation, what we have is digital screens that show the nominal situation of the aircraft subsystems, such as the hydraulic subsystem, the pneumatic subsystem, if they're operating at a nominal range, or if there's any failure on the different subsystems. Okay, and this is what we would actually see, right? So just a basic example of what the cockpits looked like before and what they look now today. Okay, right, so this is all. Thanks for your attention.